Roger Ebert was one of our nation's most beloved film critics. With his partner Gene Siskel, Roger took film criticism from the pages of newspapers and into our living rooms with the television show At the Movies. Throughout his life, Roger shared his love of film, not only by conveying what makes a good movie, but which films were his favorites. This is not a show about those movies. This is a show about the movies Roger loathed, the films he despised, the movies he absolutely hated, movies like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. On this episode of Does This Movie Suck? Hello friends and welcome to the show. This is our look through some of the worst movies ever made to see if they've gotten better with age. Right now we're working our way through Roger Ebert's 2007 book, Your Movie Sucks. On this episode, we're exploring the 2003 film, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, starring Sean Connery, Peter Wilson, and Shane West. It was directed by Stephen Norrington. The fallout from this movie was impressive. It ended or ruined careers. Afterwards, two of its principals would swear off movie making forever. So what happened? We'll look at that here in a second, but let's start how we start every episode with our Blurb Check. It's our look at movie poll quotes to see if they've been taken out of context. There's only two quotes that Fox used for LXG, as we'll call it from here on out. The first comes from Sandy Newton, who worked for CBS DFW. She's quoted as saying that the film is a mind-blowing adventure. As we know from previous episodes, broadcast television reviews are nearly impossible to hunt down, and I find them questionable at best unless we can find the source material. It always seems like someone's speaking off the cuff. And since this is a partial statement and not a complete sentence, I feel like we're on shaky ground here. Our second quote comes from Eleanor Gillespie, who's been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize multiple times. I didn't even have to source this quote, it seems genuine. She wrote, "A lightning-pasted period adventure dotted with some offhand literary references to coax a smile out of book-loving moviegoers." I mean, that's a pretty glowing movie review, but it doesn't seem fake. Seems like Eleanor genuinely liked the film. She was in the minority, though, as the film only rated 17% on the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter. Let's dig in. This movie's based on the Alan Moore comic book of the same name, but studio tinkering led this movie to reflect the book only in name. The movie starts with a crawl. It doesn't tell you anything that you can't figure out for yourself, much like the rest of this movie. It's 1899 and London police are rushing to the site of a commotion.
Halt!
That's not going to work.
Halt!
That's not going to work.
Halt! In the name of the law! How the hell do we stop this thing?
Not by standing in front of it, obviously. It's 1899, but it's some sort of futuristic steampunk 1899 where tanks, complicated submarines, and luxury cars all exist in some shape or form. Whoa, sorry. The tank, or whatever they're going to call it since this is the first one they've ever seen, crashes into the Bank of London.
There's men inside!
These men spew forth and they're all speaking German.
Was für ein Scherz! Ja, Schatz.
And because the robbers were speaking German, the attack on the bank gets Britain to blame Germany. Germany denies those charges. A month later in Berlin, the masked robber confronts a German scientist.
Was wollen Sie?
The world, Hedry. I want the world.
Man, this Phantom of the Opera meets Batman is intense. Phantom of the Batman? Batman of the Opera, I like it. Batman of the Opera pulls out this bazooka and, well, just watch this. Okay, just a few things here. I'm an editor by trade, so this shot, followed 2 shots later by this shot, doesn't make any sense. I don't want to sit here and nitpick continuity errors for all of these movies, but this is an effect shot. This isn't someone holding their coffee cup in the other hand. These shots were made to order. No one looked at this and said, shouldn't the arrow be further along, like right here? And second, why does this projectile suddenly venture up, defying all laws of physics to take down this blimp? Again, it's an effect shot, but it's not like the sudden direction change makes for a cool camera shot. Much like all of this movie, it's bland. And boring. Oh, really, really boring. Batman of the Opera takes down the blimps, which makes it seem like Britain is retaliating for the bank robbery, setting them on a path of war. And then we're whisked away to Kenya 1 month later. This movie is super specific about its dates for some reason. Sanderson Reed has traveled to Kenya to find Alan Quatermain, but it's not to hear about his amazing travels and discoveries, but to recruit him to help save Britain.
The Empire needs you.
But the question is, do I need the Empire? I'm Quatermain.
Quatermain. Alan Quatermain. It's my terrible Sean Connery. Quatermain isn't really interested in helping the British government, but as he's explaining this to Reed, some men enter the bar.
Mr. Quatermain?
Yes, indeed, sir.
Wrong Quatermain!
This leads to an action sequence so confusingly shot and edited that I had no idea where anyone was in relation to anyone else. It's hard to appreciate fight choreography if you can't tell if there is fight choreography. One guy escapes, but Quatermain shoots him a football field away. As they're questioning the man, a bomb goes off that the men brought, and it destroys Quatermain's bar. The war has come to Kenya.
I'm in.
Excellent. Pack for an English summer.
Oh, this movie really wanted that line to be a joke. The only way it's funny is if we smash cut to the next scene, but no, the film takes its mighty time getting there and the punchline doesn't land. By the way, if you wanted my poll quote for this movie, it would be, "It takes a mighty time getting there." Quatermain arrives in London with Reed. They walk down this hallway, then down the staircase, then down another staircase, down another staircase, then through a door. Is all of that necessary? They could have just walked through a door that was hidden in a bookcase on the first floor. I mean, that would have gotten the point across much more quickly. Instead, we spend 37 seconds walking with no dialogue. This movie has horrible pacing issues. It makes it incredibly boring.
I don't like theatrics. Identify yourself.
My underlings call me Sir. My superiors call me M.
M.
Alright, just so we're on the same page here. Sean Connery's playing a character with the backstory of Indiana Jones and someone who's recruited him named M, just like 007. Which is fine, but this movie takes every opportunity to wink at you. It just reminds me of all the fun I had with Sean in those other movies, and now I'm not having that much fun. M tells Quatermain about the Batman of the Opera, who's actually just called the Phantom. The leaders of Europe are meeting in Venice to discuss the state of things, and M believes that the Phantom might attack. It's up to Quatermain and his League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to stop the Phantom. M introduces Quatermain to Captain Nemo.
Rumor has it that you're a pirate.
I'd prefer a less provocative title.
The Invisible Man.
Once you're invisible, it's bloody hard to turn back.
And Mina Harker.
Mina's prior acquaintance with a reluctant League member may prove useful.
I'm waiting to be impressed.
The crew head out to recruit 2 more members, starting with Dorian Gray.
Charming decor.
You're missing a picture, Mr. Gray.
Okay, so just in case you didn't know, all these characters are out of classic literature. Here's the big problem with this movie. It wants you to have a working knowledge of these characters, but it doesn't want you to know too much, because the movie wants to change these character traits in weird, frankly stupid ways. This movie wants you to be smart, but not too smart. This movie wants you to believe that Dorian Gray's portrait makes him invincible, which frankly misses the point of Oscar Wilde's novel completely.
What is it?
Dorian's house gets invaded by the Phantom and an ultimatum is made.
Join me.
You think we'll help start a war that will consume the planet?
A mysterious figure appears and a shootout ensues. In the confusion, the Phantom escapes, leaving the League to pick up the pieces. One last bad guy gives us the revelation that Mina is a vampire, because this movie just does whatever it wants with these characters. We also discover who our shotgun savior is.
And you are?
Special Agent Sawyer. of the American Secret Service. I followed you. I knocked out a straggler and I took his place.
Very noble.
Yes, Tom Sawyer is a member of the Secret Service because this movie just does things. Come to find out, Tom Sawyer is not in the comic book. He's a character that the studio put in the film to help American audiences relate. Leave it to a movie studio to greenlight a movie with characters from 4 British, a French, and an Irish novels starring 2 Scots, an Indian, an Australian, a Brit, and an Irish guy, and then decide that the movie isn't American enough. Every aspect of this film seems tailored to fit no one. Mina reveals that she was bit by Dracula, something that didn't happen in the book, and then a bunch of special effects happen.
Our transportation is forthcoming. Behold, Nautilus, the sword of the ocean. Next stop, Paris.
When I say that this movie has major pacing issues, this is what I'm talking about. The introduction of the Nautilus and the actual movie is 48 seconds long. The edit you just watched, my edit, is 18 seconds and contains all the same information. And while we're at it, please note the size of this thing. It'll become important once we get to Venice for obvious reasons. In Paris, Quatermain and Sawyer hunt down the last member of the League.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Hyde.
As Roger points out in his review, this movie treats Jekyll and Hyde like Bruce Banner and the Hulk, right down to the size change, which doesn't happen in the book, of course. Smart, but not too smart. Once the Nautilus moves out, strange things start to happen. Strange, but certainly not interesting. Someone seems to be sneaking around the vessel stealing things, like one of Dr. Jekyll's vials. There's also some incredibly dull scenes where they rehash parts of the plot for the new members of the League. And another, Quatermain teaches Sawyer how to shoot. It's all perfectly boring. And then they go to Venice. This shot can't happen. Venice's waterways are notoriously shallow and narrow, but this massive sub makes its way through, no problem. Smart, but not too smart. Not to mention, this shot lasts 24 seconds. 24 seconds! When your movie has massive, and I mean massive pacing problems, a 24-second shot of a computerized sub cruising through Venice is inexcusable. Get on with it! We find out that there are bombs under the city's waterways, and the League docks just in time for them to witness the beginning of the destruction. And then they come up with a plan to stop the chain of explosions, I think. It makes absolutely no sense. Let's see if you can make any sense of it.
Take out one key building. Yes! Get ahead of the collapse and destroy the next building.
We can interrupt the chain of destruction.
With a beacon placed for the exact coordinates, I could launch a rocket and take out the dominant. Would be no room for error, but I tell you it could work. What are you talking about?
I don't know. Somehow Quatermain knows that the explosions are linked, and from there it gets muddy. Luckily, they brought the car along to help in their chase of the explosions.
I'll need coordinates.
Can you track this state?
Of course.
Then the car will be your target. Launch when you see the flare.
Right.
What's happening again? So there's an action sequence with so much going on that I can't even begin to make any sense of it. Tom is driving the car somewhere so they can stop the chain of explosions, I think. But I couldn't tell you why they know what they think they know, or why they think what they're doing will stop the explosions. It doesn't make any sense. Dorian jumps out of the car to fight the gunmen that are shooting at them. Mina jumps out to conjure a team of bats to take out the gunmen because whatever. Quatermain bails on Tom for some reason, hilariously landing on 2 feet. Tom gets to a place, shoots a flare, they shoot a rocket from the Nautilus, it blows up a building, stopping the explosions for some reason. This sequence is a mess. Quatermain hunts the Batman of the Opera down to a courtyard and then says this.
Venice still stands.
This is something that Roger points out in his review. Are you sure about that, Quatermain? Because I'm not so certain.
The buildings are falling!
There must be more than one bomb.
premise still stands.
It's at this point in the film where we learn who the Phantom really is and who's the inside man. This is where I'm going to leave the plot, because if you know the twists, there's absolutely zero reasons for you to watch this film. Not that there's very many reasons for you to watch this movie in the first place. This movie's really dull and boring. The film looks lifeless, the dialogue is incredibly bland, and it's not a movie that warrants rewatching. It's not clever, it's boring and drab. The entire film feels like you're stuck underneath a wet blanket. It feels like fun might not enter your life ever again. Having said that, it might not come as a surprise to you that the original comic books were published by America's Best Comics, which is a subsidiary of, say it with me, DC Comics. Explains the dullness and the drabness and the sadness and the darkness and the... But this movie has a reputation for being a disaster of a film. Let's settle that right now. This movie was not a financial disaster for Fox. According to Box Office Mojo, the film cost $78 million for Fox, but it made $179 million worldwide. That's not a bomb. The only thing interesting about this film is the story of its production. It was a bit of a fiasco. After turning down roles in The Matrix and The Lord of the Rings because he didn't understand them, Sean Connery wanted to find a huge success regardless of his understanding of the script. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen fit the bill. He signed on for $17 million to act and executive produce the movie after meeting with director Stephen Norrington. Their relationship would sour quickly, more on that in a moment. With filming set to begin in Prague, $7 million worth of sets were destroyed when Prague had their worst floods in over a decade. The shoot would be delayed 2 weeks, but Fox would not give Norrington more days to complete the film, nor would they move the film's release date. The movie shoot would then move to Malta while the sets were rebuilt in Prague. When the movie's production finally returned to Prague in November of 2002, Norrington and Connery's relationship had soured. The two men almost came to blows after Norrington shut down the production for a day after not liking the look of a prop elephant gun. In an interview after the film was completed, Connery didn't pull any punches. Talking with the British newspaper The Times, Connery said of the shoot, "It was a nightmare," going on to say, "The experience had a great influence on me. It made me think about showbiz. I got fed up dealing with idiots." Saying of Norrington, "On the first day, I realized he was insane." The fallout was swift. After rumors circled about who actually completed the film, Norrington didn't show for the premiere. The creator of the comic book, Alan Moore, never actually saw the film. While Norrington would be briefly attached to various projects after the film was released, as of now he hasn't directed again, only working on various special effects projects. The actors in the film never reached any sort of superstardom in the States, with most of their careers moving back to television. And Connery? Well, he'd never appear on camera again, saying that it would take something monumental to get him back in front of the camera. Not even Spielberg could get him to return for the 4th Indiana Jones movie. And Sean, I gotta say, you dodged a bullet there. So, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, does it suck? Yes. It's incredibly dull and boring, but it's not really the type of box office disaster that we've seen on this show. But it's a cautionary tale about what happens when there's studio attention in all of the wrong places. But it's another one off the list. And now there's rumors of a reboot being made with an all-female cast, so we'll see how that goes. If you like this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of the episodes of our shows. And we'll see you next time when we ask the question, does this movie suck? Thanks for watching.